Hi.
Shalom.
Somebody was on for a few minutes and then they went off, so I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe they'll be back.
That'd be good. Or either I want nobody or I want 10. Not 2.
Right. Okay.
After I'm finished, I'm going to go fill up the car with gas.
Yeah, I did that this afternoon. Got some cash.
Yeah, I have some. I need more. Yeah, and
Yeah.
If without air conditioning, if we end up without air conditioning, I'm going to Dallas to be with a friend.
Yeah.
So I need cash.
Oh, what a world we live in.
Oh yeah, that's the word for it. Well, yeah. My father called in his dementia. He called and told me that he's worried about the weather. He watches the weather 24/7, and I'm very jealous. My brother got a 16-minute conversation yesterday. I got 4.5.
That's normally what I get. We talk about the weather and then there's really not a whole lot.
It's literally 4.5 minutes. All right, I'll let you go. Okay, Dad.
Where is he?
Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello, Carolyn.
She's muted.
Yes. All right, let's see. Okay, yeah. Yep.
So is Sherry Ann is totally freaked out?
Sherry Ann is freaked out. It's clear to me that Karen is freaked out. She just posted some on Facebook that she's having a breakdown.
Yeah. She was starting her breakdown yesterday, so.
Yeah, she at the end of our meeting today, I almost thought she was going to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I wish there's nothing really to offer because,
No.
it's a legitimate fear at this point.
Right. Well, hopefully it will not be as bad as we think it will be.
Yeah. I vote for that. Hi, Suzanne. You're muted. Oh, okay.
Presentation down to perfection.
Okay. You didn't take this one already on Unatana Tokef?
I may have a year or so ago. I wasn't there on Sunday.
Not this, the previous Sunday. This Sunday we did Kol Nidre.
No.
Okay. Good. Welcome.
No, I was in something else. That 10 o'clock hour on Sunday is real popular.
It is. There's lots going on all over the country. Yep.
And I'm just hoping I'll be able to use this computer day after tomorrow because that would mean the power would still be on. Hi, Lena.
Indeed. I bought a bunch of jigsaw puzzles. I bought books. And I bought candles. I realize with jigsaw puzzle, candles are not going to do it. You can't see the nuanced colors.
Unless you wanted to do something to like fray the sides of the pieces so that they would fit better.
There you go. I'll spend the next day fraying all the pieces.
I just hope that we don't have the thought of being without power for a lengthy period of time kind of terrifies me.
I'm going to be your security blanket, Suzanne.
Thank you, Lena.
I'm going to be checking. I promise you, I will be checking on you regularly.
And I will be calling you guys.
And virtually holding your hand through this.
Yeah.
I just took a whole lot of pictures off the wall. Anything that was close to windows.
I'm not doing anything till I know it's coming to Galveston. I think it could make it. I said, my joke is they used to name hurricanes all female names because we're so unpredictable. But then,
there you go.
Then it was discrimination. So they started naming them some men and some women names.
Yep.
Well, this one, I know someone named Laura that at work.
Oh, I know a lot
at the
of
library that a very good friend of mine is having trouble with. So I didn't bring it up with him. I'm sure he's
Hi,
already
Marion.
thought about it.
Hello,
Hey,
everybody.
Marion.
So I want to make sure everybody has the materials run off. I hate putting it up on the screen because I like to be able to see everybody's faces. If you
Where-
don't, we'll read it out loud. It was in the email today. When we send out the email, there's a link to run things off. Don't worry, we'll read it
Can
out
I, can I
loud.
look at it on my phone? Pull it up on,
Probably so.
or my
Yeah,
iPad?
sure,
I cannot keep up with emails. It's overwhelming.
I
I
get
mean,
it.
even from Brish Shalom today, there probably were about 10 of them.
10?
Preparing for the storm, I got
Some
some kind of
attention.
survey. They sent out one about preparing for the hurricane. I got some kind
Right.
of survey.
Well, yeah, that's.
Maybe
because
not
of the
10, maybe
hurricane.
four or five.
Yeah, okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, Marianne, we can't hear you.
Is this a new shirt and did you change your underwear since the last time we discussed this?
Wait, when did you discuss this?
You did the Una Teca the
Like, a
other,
week ago Sunday.
right, I wanted to get more information. It was so fabulous.
Well, it's the same session.
Good.
And yes, I did change. I'll tell you about my shirt. The underwear I'm not discussing.
All right, fine.
Too much information, Marion.
Right.
Well, he looks the same background. Okay.
Yes, indeed. I'm still at home.
All right, I am too.
But you know
I'm
what? You're not wearing a
digesting
tie. Every time I see you, you always have a tie. This might be the first time I've seen you without a tie.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He always has it.
I'm more often than not in the tie. But it's
Even
not
when he's a
unusual.
participant on a Zoom, he has a tie on.
Yeah. All right,
May-
ladies and gentlemen, we're
it.
going to do it
Block
when it's time to
myself out, but
talk.
I'm listening.
And Marianne, since you took it already, why don't you start us out with reading the first reading, A Merchant? And about halfway through, Lena, you don't have it. Suzanne, would you read the second half? Okay.
Okay.
So Marianne, you're on first.
A merchant suffered a disastrous loss when his business burned down, destroying all his merchandise. He was uninsured and owed his supplier a huge sum of money. There was no way he could possibly raise enough money to pay the debt, and he became very depressed. His friends advised him to go to the supplier and tell him what had happened. Surely the supplier would be considerate and arrange reasonable terms for payment of the debt. The merchant accepted this advice and traveled to the city of the supplier. However, when he approached the supplier's office and realized that he was in such terrible straits that he had to beg for mercy, he was overcome with depression and began to cry. The supplier, hearing someone weeping, went to investigate. Seeing one of his best customers in tears, he invited him into his office. When the merchant calmed down, he told the supplier what had happened and asked if he could make some accommodation so that he could repay the debt. The supplier was deeply moved by the merchant's plight. He said, "My friend, do not worry about repayment now. Of course, I will sharply reduce the debt. Furthermore, I will lend you 2,000 rubles and give you enough merchandise so that you can go into business again. Eventually, you will make enough profit to repay me." He encouraged and confronted the merchant and wished
Comforted. You didn't confront me, comforted him.
he comforted.
Yes, very big difference. Okay.
Yes.
Suzanne, would you go on?
Okay. Upon returning to the inn, excuse me, where he was lodging, the merchant was in high spirits and told some of the other guests about his good fortune. Hearing the story, one asked him why he was crying. Wait a minute, I think I left a line out. However, hearing the story, one of the guests went to the supplier's office and began crying aloud. When the supplier asked him why he was crying, he said this business had failed and he was in need of funds to start up again. The supplier gave him a donation of 2 rubles. 2 rubles is all you're giving me, the man asked. When I knew that you gave another merchant 2,000 rubles and a huge supply of merchandise. The supplier said, "You fool, that merchant has been doing business with me for 20 years. During that time, I made considerable profit transacting with him. Now that he has fallen on hard times, it is only fair that if I help him. But you, I have never seen you before. I have never profited a single cent from you. What right do you have to expect me to do for you what I did for him?"
Keep going.
Okay. The Maggid continued, when a Jew who has been going to shul to pray every day and has done his best to obey God's will, makes his moral inventory before Rosh Hashanah and realizes how derelict he was in serving God properly, he comes to shul and tearfully asks God for forgiveness. God fills this person's broken heart and gladly forgives him, blessing him with a year of prosperity. He knows this merchant will do his utmost to repay the debt. But those who are negligent in observing God's commandments and come to shul only once a year, they are much like the person who expects a handsome donation from the supplier with whom he never did any business. Is this not a chutzpah that they may unreasonable request from God?
Okay, so the Talmud takes a little bit more of a traditional perspective than I might offer. Its message is essentially, how can you, if you don't come to shul all year long, if you're not engaged in Jewish life, how do you show up and turn to God and say, forgive me? I might take a different angle on it, although it's the same message in a sense. It's not punishment. It's a matter of when you put in the work to establish a relationship, you have a greater chance of getting the response out of the person, or in this case, God, that you're looking for. It's not punishment that you don't get it. It's reward for the relationship building that kind of goes on. That said, still, everybody has the chance to turn to God at this time of year. Okay? What changes is you change in the ongoing relationship, and so you're in a better place to hear the message of God. All right? I think that's the point here. So I want to talk a little bit about the high holidays before I get into the specifics of Unetam Tokef. Judaism is a life affirming religion. We focus on the here and now. We worry less about reward and punishment in the afterlife. We worry less about the afterlife in general. When it comes, it'll come. We focus on how do we improve the world in which we live. That's our responsibility, okay? For us, when someone says l'chaim, it's much more than a toast. It's a worldview. We have a view that life is critical. And essentially in Jewish tradition, other than 3 specific commandments for the sake of life, everything goes out the window. If somebody comes to you and says, if you don't eat this pork, I will kill you, it's lunchtime. Okay? All right, you eat the pork. Now, whether or not you enjoy it, that's your own issue, okay? But you don't give up your life for the vast, vast majority of the mitzvot. It's only when somebody says to you, if you don't kill Johnny, I will kill you. You're not allowed to commit murder. You're not allowed to commit adultery. You're not allowed to publicly worship idols. For those 3 things, one is told to give up your life. All other mitzvot are put aside when life is at stake. So we are a life-affirming religion. I want to emphasize that. But there is, having said that, one notable exception to the arm's length treatment of death, and that is the high holidays. We're going to talk a lot about this over the next couple of weeks. During this cluster of days, we're told to deliberately focus on the fact that not death happens, we will die. If you think of what we're wearing white robes. We are buried in white robes. It's very deliberate, right? It is in your face. It's a time to concentrate on the meaning of life. It taps into our deep human feelings about death, and it, in a sense, forces us in so doing to stop living life routinely. And I've said this a few times already. In this COVID world, it's like we're living Groundhog Day over and over, like the movie. All right, it's like no distinction one day to the next, and it's easy, in COVID, there's some understanding of it. But it's easy to fall into that in life as well. And the high holidays is a way of saying, stop it. Stop and give life meaning. Stop the routine. Look at what's really valuable. Its goal here in confronting death is not to frighten anyone, but to stimulate growth and improvement. And in order to do that, you have to break out the shackles of just doing the same thing over and over. It's a move towards an examined life. All right. There are two themes we've talked that really play out. One is death, as I've just talked about. The other is judgment. And from those two ideas comes the central image that underlies the whole high holiday period, and that is the trial. All right? That we're standing before God on trial for our behaviors. We're asked on our own level to make a thorough assessment. Is my life contributing to the balance of life in the big picture? Or does the net effect of my actions tilt the scale towards death? Where am I? Because everybody believes they're good until you stop and look at some of the things you've done. All right? If my life ended today, would it have been worthwhile? I want you to imagine you've got this dramatic moment. The shofar blasts, and its sound is saying to you, the judge is sitting on the bench. Hear ye, hear ye. The shofar is announcing the time has arrived. I have good news. It's not just any judge sitting on a bench. You got a judge who's biased. Okay? We all want a judge that's biased in our favor. You got a judge who's cajoling. You got a judge who's pushing you and saying, make good choices. I want you to succeed. But you got to make the right choices nonetheless. So you have a judge that wants you to win, but you still have to win. An interesting note that the month of Rosh Hashanah, of Tishrei, on the zodiac scale, on the zodiac calendar, the sign is a scale. Okay? Because in most of the world, there were at least 2, if not 4 New Years each year. Every time the seasons changed, it was a new year. And it meant that many backward societies, that's still the case. And with that, it was every new year was a time of judgment. And so September or Tishrei became a period of judgment. The symbol is the scale. And with that, I want to read reading number 2. It's short, so I'll read this one. All right. On Rosh Hashanah, all the inhabitants of the world pass before God in judgment like a flock of sheep. Ma'avir tzono tachat shivto, they pass as sheep under God's staff. All are judged on Rosh Hashanah, and the verdict is sealed on Yom Kippur. You've heard this many times. This is from the second paragraph of the Unatana Tokef. I'm not making it up. It's part of the text itself. What Judaism does in that judgment period is it introduces a loophole. You are being judged. The judge has sat down on Rosh Hashanah and he's judging you. But you got a loophole. You've got 10 days to make things better. You can use, it's a time in which prayer, repentance, and charity can help shape the decree of what is being decided here. Okay, that's the loophole. You may have screwed up in a year, but we're going to give you 10 more days to fix it. All right, so that you can remove the obstacles between you and God in relationship so that you can start fresh. That's really the goal here. Okay? A number of years ago, I know some of you were in my home for my mom when my mom passed away and I had the Shiva Minyan. A number of years ago, I read this text and I really found myself reflecting on the issue of human vulnerability. It had to do, it was right around the same time, my best friend had just passed away. He had passed away from a disease that's so rare, the doctors really weren't even looking for it. It's so rare that if you used to watch the show House, which only dealt with rare things, the name of it, amyloidosis, only came up in that show on a regular basis, okay? It was unusual. And he had passed away at the age of 54. 2 years later, my mom, having battled cancer 4 times, finally succumbed. She got an extra 20 years, thank God. That's a blessing of modern science. But she ultimately succumbed and lost her life to this dreaded disease. And what was really evident to me in that time is the real precariousness of life. We sort of move through our daily existence with an innocence, assuming a predictability, assuming a pattern to events that'll unfold. All right, we're in control is how we sort of go through life. It doesn't take much to remind us of how vulnerable we really are. We think we're courageous, we think we're strong, and yet, like the words of Yisker, kichatzitz novel, like grass that withers. The end of the day, that's what this message is. The high holidays implore us to take notice. They're days of awe and dread and hope and longing and solitude and memory and community. And once a year, we're meant to be shaken out of that. Okay, I want to use the shofar as an example. The human body is built with a lot of gifts. One of those gifts is a mental filter. We can go through our lives. I bet you if you stop and you listened around you right now, there are a lot of ambient sounds going on in your home. You probably didn't notice them before I mentioned it. We have the ability to filter things out and focus on what's in front of us. Okay? That's true, by the way, of suffering. There are moments in which we look around the world and we see suffering going on all around us. If you could not shut that out, you could do nothing else. There's so much suffering in the world. If you stop to focus on it all day long, you would sit in a corner and shake. By the way, that's what schizophrenia is. There's no filter. People cannot filter out the input that's coming at them, and so they're overwhelmed by it, and they sit in a corner. Thank God we have a filter. The message of the shofar, however, is this time of year, it's time to put the filters away. It's time to look around and see the suffering. It's time to look around and measure your behavior. It's time to step out of Groundhog's Day and realize you have to be different now. Look at it. Painful as it is to admit, if you look around the sanctuary on this Rosh Hashanah, I can promise you some of the people that you see will not be there the next Rosh Hashanah. I can promise you that. All right? I'll share with you a humorous story, but it's very poignant at the same time. And when I got my first job in Nanuet, New York as a cantor, first Rosh Hashanah, I'm standing on the bima, and my mom, of course, came to visit the first year her son's a cantor. She's going to be there. They gave her a seat in the front row. Sitting next to her was a doctor and his wife, and she did a little bit of chatting with them. You know, I didn't give her the evil eye when she was talking. All right, she did a little chatting with them and got to know them a little bit. I knew them peripherally, very, very, very to the side. During that year, I got a message, and I thought I read that the doctor had passed away. And I sent my mom a note saying, I know you got to know him someone. I wanted to let you know that he passed away. Imagine my shock and that of my mother when on Rosh Hashanah he walked in. Apparently, I must have misread something. But the message is clear. That may not have been him, but there were other people who were missing. Okay? Somebody's life was affected, even though in that particular moment it wasn't me or my mom in terms of who she was sitting next to. There were people there who had people missing. All right? Whether by fire or water, in old age and youth, frailty or death, frailty and death are part of our lives. And many of us struggle to overcome the terror of death with avoidance and repression. If we didn't have the filter that enabled that, we would shut down. Most of the year we say, put the filter away. Here we say, open it. All right. Our titles, our uniforms, our credentials, our wallets simply provide us with an illusion of control. But the high holidays say to us, you don't have control. At the end of the day, is one of the prayer right after this text talks about, afar anachnu, we are but dust. All right. We don't know who's going to live and die. We don't know. We know mortality is wanton and capricious. It can claim any of us. Many of our prayers address this issue, but the Unatana Tokef addresses it with the poetic force of a 2x4. It's like being hit in the head. There's no subtlety in this prayer. None. It says, notice me. Right? All the fantasies that we manage to hold on to, our self-sufficiency, our status, our immunity from circumstance, all of that is wiped away. In the book of Samuel, there's most of David's life is described in the book of Samuel. He's a man filled with a zest for life. Yet when you finish Samuel and go into the book of Kings, the very first verse tells us that David is an old man shivering in a bed. He cannot even keep himself warm. One chapter, and it says, King David was now old, advanced in years. One chapter later, the Bible reads, David is dying. The rabbis noticed something very significant in these two verses. When he's old, he's still called King David. When he's dying, he's simply David. Like David, we can't hide behind power and position and title. We have to face death, and you don't do it as a king, a rabbi, an employee, or even as a parent. In that moment, it is a singular moment. We face it as David did, as the essence of our individual souls. And so we're brought face to face with who we really are. And that's what the High Holidays is trying to say to you. If my life ended now, would it have been worthwhile? That I want to drive home that message, because you're going to see it over and over in the lectures we talk about over the next couple of weeks. So let's give you a little bit of a background on this specific prayer, okay? And then we'll get into the prayer itself. It's become, Unetana Tokef has become a highlight of the High Holiday liturgy since the 13th century. We're going back 800 years. It's associated with a legend of a famous rabbi by the name of Amnon of Mainz, the city of Mainz. Many of us may recall this from growing up. I remember my rabbi telling the story as an introduction to the prayer every single year. There are versions of this story, and they differ slightly, but I want to give you a synopsis. And so let's see, who hasn't read yet? Michelle, would you start for us the legend of Rabbi Amnon, and then Lena, did you find it? All right, so you pick up halfway through. So reading 1 and then reading 2. Ready? You have to unmute.
I think he's talking to you. It says Michelle's iPhone.
Oh, yes.
He's not Michelle. I don't know.
Oh, I can't see. Okay.
Oh,
Who's?
it's a man.
Okay. I thought it was French. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is.
All right, Lena, why don't you start?
Okay. The legend of Rabbi Amnon. How do you say it?
Amnon.
Amnon. Rabbi Amnon is approached by the local bishop, who asks him to convert. He puts the bishop off, saying he will think about it and return word in 3 days. Almost immediately, however, consumed with remorse for even suggesting that he might apostatize,
You might convert.
he refuses to appear when the 3 days are over. Perturbed by the slight, the bishop dispatches soldiers to bring him to the castle by force. When asked why he failed to appear on his own free will, Amnon explains that he should never have promised to come in the first place. Saying he would is a grievous enough sin to deserve punishment, which he is perfectly willing, even anxious, to undergo. Since it is his tongue that sinned, his tongue should be cut from his mouth. The bishop, however, maintains that the sin was performed by Amnon's feet, which he did not use to carry him to the palace as he had promised. He thereupon orders that Amnon's toes and fingers be hacked off.
Not lovely. Yeah. Keep going.
What is then left of Amnon is then carried on a knight's shield back to the Jewish quarter. When Rosh Hashanah next arrives, Amnon asks to be delivered to the synagogue, where he is placed next to the prayer leader, alongside his amputated parts. As the leader is about to recite the Kedusha, the prayer specifying God's sanctity, Amnon asks him to wait a minute while he, Amnon, sanctifies God's name.
Okay. As so, let holiness rise up to you, he begins, after which he recites Unatan Tokef, a prayer that no one had heard before. When he finishes, he disappears from before the congregation, somehow taken by God from this world. 3 days later, he reappears in a dream to Rabbi Kalanimus ben Meshulam to teach him that prayer and to instruct him to publicize it far and wide throughout the diaspora. Again, this is the legend of Rabbi Amnon. So what do you make of such a story? It could be absolutely true, all right? But if so, it's a little bit strange that we find no mention of this Rabbi Amnon in any other documents. One would expect that somebody so famous to have done this would show up elsewhere. What it seems we have here is, I use the word legend very deliberately, it seems a text that's patently composed of bits and pieces of other tales, in a sense, a combination of folk motifs. What is likely is that it arose during a difficult period in Jewish history, when persecution and death were the order of the day, and the Jews, because of that, may well have considered abandoning Judaism to save themselves and their children. And so what you have is a pious tale of martyrdom that was probably written during the times of the First and Second Crusades. Whether or not these details are true for Amnon, they were true for many. Even if it's a collective of many people, this is the life they were leading, the torture and the murder. Right? And realistically, following the Holocaust, this legend took on all the more power. And so it's not a surprise during my growing up years that the rabbis were repeating this a lot. They would use this introduction because it spoke to the hearts of people at that moment in time. All right, next, let's look at the prayer itself. Let's look at the translation. All right, Sandra, would you start? Do you have it? And you need to unmute. There
Yeah,
you go.
on the right page. So tell me again. I'm
Reading
using
number 4, where it says,
I'm-
let us speak.
it's all right. Keep going to somebody else.
Okay. Lisa, would you read for us? If I don't see your face, I'm not going to call on you because I don't know if you're at the screen or you stepped away, and I don't want to embarrass anybody. Okay. All right. Lena, let's go back. Let's go back. All right.
Does the gentleman, does he, look?
Would you like to read? Who would like to read? I don't care who reads.
I don't
Go
like
ahead.
to
You're
read.
on. Go. Read. Just unmute.
We can't hear.
Unmute.
Gail's gonna read.
No, he's going to read. He's got to unmute.
You're on mute. Just unmute and you can read.
I think he's,
Okay.
there you go. Oh,
Let us
there he
speak.
is.
Yeah, it's Bob. My wife's
Bob.
Michelle. Let
Yeah.
us speak of the sacred power of this day, profound and awe-inspiring. On it, your sovereignty is celebrated, and your throne from which you rule in truth is established with love. Truly, you are the judge and prosecutor, expert and witness, completing the indictment, bringing the case, and enumerating the counts. You recall all this is forgotten and will open the book of remembrance, which speaks for itself, for our own hands have signed the page.
Keep going.
The great shofar will be sounded, and the still small voice will be heard. Angels will be alarmed, seized with fear and trembling, declaring, this very day is the day of judgment. For even the hosts of heaven are judged. No one is innocent in your sight. All that lives on earth will pass before you like a flock of sheep. As a shepherd examines the flock, making each sheep pass under the staff, so you will review and number and count, judging each living being, determining the fate of everything in creation, inscribing their destiny.
Keep going, finish up.
On Rosh Hashanah, it is written, and the fast of the Day of Atonement, it is sealed. How many will pass on, and how many will be born? Who will live and who will die? Who will live a long life and who will come to an untimely end? Who will perish by fire and who by water? Who by sword and who by beast? Who by hunger and who by thirst? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who will be strangled and who will be stoned? Who will be at peace and who will be troubled? Who will be serene and who will be disturbed? Who will be tranquil and who will be tormented? Who will be impoverished and who will be enriched? Who will be brought low and who will be raised up? But teshuvah, tefillah, and tzedakah have the power to transform the harshness of our destiny.
Okay. So what I want to do at this point is open the floor and say, what do you think?
Dark.
Dark. That it is. Anybody else?
Well,
Mary.
You know, I didn't grow up going to a synagogue. I'm definitely a Jewish woman born from Jewish parents, but they didn't go to a synagogue.
Okay.
And when I read this, you know, when I was in services, it still brings such tears to my eyes. It's all I can do just not to weep in shul because I will destroy my makeup. Hello, God forbid. You know?
What are the tears for? Explain the
The
tears.
tears are the reality of when this was written, even though it was medieval, is what you told us, right? Or is that getting it mixed up with the Kol Nidre?
No, that both are medieval.
And that they knew enough, literate or not literate, to be able to create this poem or soliloquy or whatever the word is for it. Because it is the real world. We are tranquil, though some are tranquil, some are so tormented they can't sleep any night. Some, it's not strangled or stoned, but you know, someone could be shot or in a car accident or maliciously spoken of. It is just so prevalent. It makes me also feel part of a huge community, that I'm not out there alone, even though I'm reading this, or I may walk into the synagogue and not see somebody, that these prayers are read and spoken all throughout the world.
Okay.
And so it makes me feel almost connected through the past, the immediate, and even possibly for when I walk out the door of synagogue that day.
Yeah,
It's poignant for me.
Fascinating. Great. Good. Good. Anybody else? Yeah, Bob.
It speaks of the fragility of life at a time when it was written, where Jews were being slaughtered all throughout Europe during the Crusades. And at the same time, it sort of holds out the promise of being rescued from this fate by prayer, by goodness, to transform this destiny.
Okay. Sandra?
Hi, yeah. I'm reading from the Reconstructionist Prayer Book, a commentary by, well, one is by Rabbi Michael Strassfeld and one is by Rabbi Brian Walt. Rabbi Walt says, "What is my life signature in the Book of Remembrance? Does the way in which I live my life reflect the divine image within me? What are the choices that I have made? And will the choices that I make over the coming year help me live a life that will fashion God's image in the world and inside me?" So that's what it means to me. I mean, I've read and written and helped lead all kinds of versions of Unatana Tokef, but really it calls me, because of its dramatic presentation, to really think about those things. That, how am I creating that life? Is there really going to be a life in my choosing that will help me feel like I'm in God's image and that I'm walking and doing?
Okay.
And Rabbi Streisfeld says, "In this day we confront which we spend most of our lives denying, that we shall die and be no more. And Yom Kippur awakens us to lead our lives because we come face to face and must acknowledge our own mortality." So, those are good challenges for me. I mean, I don't believe in the literal meaning, but I believe in the spirit of this prayer.
So that's where I want to go, because what Strasfeld and others have done is they've droshed.
Right.
Okay? Because to look at this prayer in its literal sense, it's extremely difficult. What you've got here is a portrayal of God standing in judgment. By Yom Kippur, according to this text, if you take it in its literal terms, God has decided who will live and who will die and how they will die as well. So I might be scheduled for terminal cancer next November, and somebody else might be scheduled for a car crash 2 weeks later. All right. Of course, until Yom Kippur, the decree is only provisional. If we changed our ways, if we prayed hard enough, we threw a few dollars at somebody, we did actions of righteousness, we might be able to avert the decree. Do the right thing before the final gavel falls, and neither the cancer nor the car crash are going to happen. That's what the prayer says in its literal sense. Okay? So, Sandra, I agree. Obviously, Strasbourg is saying what I'm saying. We find this literal reading offensive. Okay? Every experience in our life also tells us that life doesn't work that way. I don't get to put a prayer into the cosmic vending machine and get the prize I want. Life doesn't work that way. God is not a divine puppet master. All right, who's sitting down and writing out this grisly list of the ways that all of us are going to die. In the modern world, as you said, we'd probably change the list. Bob, I think you said we'd have a different list of the ways in which we die. It wouldn't necessarily, most of us are not planning on being stoned. At least not in the way I'm using it here. That's a different story. All right? In a sense, it's almost blasphemous, because I look at this and I say, so you're telling me my mom, who died at 75, had 74 good years, but oh my God, that last year she was a horrible human being, and so she died. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying this on a literal level. And so we're left to drosh. But if you remember, I said to you, it is a legend, number one. The other thing is it's poetry. Who reads poetry literally? You cannot read the Psalms literally, because I can promise you that the hills do not skip like rams. They don't. It's poetry. This whole concept of the book of Zachrenu l'chaim, Melech hafetz b'chaim, remember us unto life. Write us into the book, oh God, who wants life, who reveres life. Write us in. It's imagery. And with that, I want to take a look at a couple things within the text. So I'm going to look at text number 2. Just because of time, I'm going to jump to number 2. It says, "V'tizkor kol hanishkachot v'tiftach et sefer hazichronot." You will remember everything that has been forgotten, and you will open the book of memories. Now, again, I'm droshing. This is not old Mark Levine. I've taken it from other people. So I've done pretty much what Sandra was doing as well. Nothing remains a secret. We all know at the end of the day, 99% of our secrets come out in some way. They emerge, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It's only a matter of time before we find ourselves, in a sense, exposed as naked as the day we were born. That's reality. But having said that, better we should live our lives assuming that it will be found out, because whether it's in our phone calls, in our emails, in our text messages, in our financial transactions, everything is known, recorded, remembered, and on permanent display. If you live your life as if God is doing that and watching you, it can be very powerful. We put a mezuzah on the doors of every room in our house, including our bedrooms and the darkest, backest part of the house, because we're reminded that even in the darkest places in our house, God's still watching. Okay? Right, everybody blushes now. Right, exactly. But the point is, if we recognize, and this is saying to you, remember, God is writing it down, not in a literal sense. It's as if you imagine yourself being watched. How would that affect your behavior? That's one. Text 3. Ume'alav yikareh v'chotam yad kol adam bo. And it will be read from, in other words, the book of life. Everyone's signature is in it. And Sandra, I think you said something about this in the reading. We write the stories of our lives. On the one hand, all right, God is referred to as the Chotei V'chotem. He is the author and the sealer of the book, but he doesn't have full authorship. We have authorship on it as well. There is a midrash, I'm sure many of you have heard this, that at the time we leave this world, God presents the sinners with a full record of their lives. And the midrash says your job at that moment is to put your John Hancock on the line and say, yep, that's me. The author of the Yonatan HaTokef extended that idea and transferred it to the high holidays. It says we have responsibility. It says we may not have control of everything, but we do have control of some things. And those things which we can control, we are responsible for the choices that we make. Everyone's signature is on their life. All right. Your chotam yad. Each of us signs the book with our own deeds. God writes and God writes and God seals. Man writes and man seals. Okay. So the first idea here was that we can't hide. Live your life as if it's being observed. The second one is live your life as if you're going to have to sign for what you're doing. The second paragraph of this text, for me, it's actually one of the more powerful moments. It's Uv shofar gadol, and the great shofar is sounded. V'kol damama daka, and a small sound will be heard. All right. Revelation can come to us by listening to Beethoven's Ode to Joy, to Moshe Ganchos Chazanut, to Louis Armstrong's trumpet, Mount Rainier, other moments in life where we're just overwhelmed and we have some sense of revelation in the moment. But revelation usually happens in much more quiet moments, less dramatic ways. You've got trees in the Arctic Circle. You've got the call of a bird, the cry of a baby, or even the silence of a corpse. In those kinds of moments, the moments are just as powerful. I want to read, so Marion, would you read reading number 7? This is from Kings. It reflects it. It's the source of what that first line of Shofar Gadol was. Go ahead. You need to unmute.
I don't have a reading number 7.
Okay, and lo, the Lord passed by.
Oh, wait, here it is. No,
Okay.
It says reading number 5. Sorry.
Okay, my apologies. Go ahead.
Reading number 5?
And lo, the Lord passed by. That one.
Hold on. Sorry, I don't have it.
All right, Lena, would you read it first? Go ahead.
I don't have it either. I only have 5 pages, and it's the last one.
That's all I have too.
Okay, then you know what?
It says when we really begin a new year, it is decided.
Suzanne, you have it?
No, I was going to say, I don't think any of us have it.
Okay, so let me read you the text. This is from the book of Kings. It's the biblical text. And lo, the Lord passed by. there was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by the power of the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a thin whisper of a sound. That's where often you find God. All right. And so the author of Unatan Tokef in this paragraph, Hu Shofar Gadol, if you hear me sing it, I'm going to do exactly that. Hu Shofar Gadol Itaka. Kol Dimama Daka Yishama. The sound is blasting, and what am I hearing? The still small voice. Okay? It's meant to be expressed in the music as well. We then get to the last paragraph, which is what everybody knows best. Birosh Hashanah Yikatevun. Right, we know this, all right? On Rosh Hashanah, it's written, Yom Kippur, it is sealed, and then the paragraph ends, but Tshuva, Tfilah, Tzedakah help the harshness of the decree pass. Even in this moment of judgment, we're still, as I said to you, we have a loophole. We get 10 more days. We have a chance. There was an alternative version, earlier version to what we have here. It says for us, prayer, repentance, and tzedakah have the ability to shift to ma'avir, to sort of cause a passing, a changing of the decree. There was an earlier version in which it said mevatalim, not ma'avirim, but mevatalim, nullify the decree. And if you ever looked at the old Silverman Siddur, that's actually how they translated it. Even though they had changed the English, the Hebrew, they translated it to nullify. And my rabbi every year got up and said, guys, that's not what it says, because it no longer does. It wasn't, maybe 100 years after it was written, it was changed, because it couldn't survive. The rabbis of the time couldn't stomach the false promise that doing good would bring about long life. That's not the way it works. All right? There's nobody who can look at life and say, well, that's the solution. I'll do that. It don't work that way. All right? So these actions, Shuvah, Tfilah, Tzedakah, they may shape the decree, but they don't nullify it. They don't tear it up. They don't cancel, avert. They temper it. So they may not cure a disease or restore a loved one for us, but because of the people we become in these actions, they may attract people to our sickbed, or they may attract people to our house of mourning and help us smile in a moment of severe pain. They may restore for us a sense of connection, purpose, and peace. So ma'avirin at the end, we say, U'tshuva, u'tzedakah, u'tshuva, u'tfilah, u'tzedakah, ma'avirin et roa. That's we all sing this. Is a Lewandowski piece from years and years and years ago. Everybody around the world does this single piece. And you're saying not that it will annul. It will not nullify. It has the potential to change the way in which it plays out. You know, in his classic Holocaust book, The Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl basically says this, that he affirms the truth that we may not decide the conditions of our existence. We may not be in control of them, but we always possess the freedom to interpret and to choose our responses. How we make sense of things, how we deal with them is what we're in control of. There are people who melt at the slightest disappointment, and there are people who suffer tremendously and somehow maintain an air of optimism. Okay, most of us fall somewhere in between because that's normal human behavior. But on its two extremes, that's the continuum upon which we all sit, somewhere on that line. We choose whether or not to find new meaning in our tragic moments, or whether to remain stuck, to find healing, or to hunker down in self-justification and denial. It's not an automatic reflex, it is chosen. We may not be able to choose our circumstances, but we can choose our response. And that, in a sense, is the chotam yad. That is the signature that we apply. That's where we're putting our name on the dot, on the line, dotted line, is how we respond. And we'll finish up with reading number 5, but before we do, I want to provide what you've all hinted at it, and I want to say this. I've said it a number of times, and I want to say it again. This is how I understand this prayer. I do not take it literally. I don't believe in a God who's sitting up there writing a list of grisly outcomes. But if you're a good little boy, I'll give you a lollipop. I don't buy that. That said, I would say, don't believe it literally, but live your life as if it were true. Because in so doing, you will make the world a better place. You will improve the outlook that you bring to situations. You will improve your ability to heal. Take it not literally, take it not as fact, but take it as truth. That would be my suggestion on how we deal with this prayer. And we're going to say it 3 times this Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. All right? So as you're reading it, it kind of plays into what Michael Strassfeld was saying. All right? To some, this does require us to interpret and to drash and to make sense of it, because literally it's offensive.
Well, that's why I think that when you're doing the Alchet, it gives you an opportunity to, you're being there for your community, but it's also giving you an awakening in your own world, how you can do better.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in 2 weeks, where it's not just about the things I've done for the sin I committed. It's also sort of a checklist of what you need to do going forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Because those of us that have been in the renewal movement have a whole list. The water, the brushing our teeth, turning off the, it can go on for 360 mitzvot that we could do. Okay.
Right. All right. So reading, Marianne, do you have reading?
Yes, I
5?
have this one.
Why don't you read us number 5, and with this we'll finish.
When we really begin a new year, it is decided. And when we actually repent, it is determined. Who shall be truly alive, and who shall merely exist? Who shall be happy, and who shall be miserable? Who shall attain fulfillment in his days, and who shall not attain fulfillment in his days? Who shall be tormented by the fire of ambition, and whose hope shall be quenched by the fires of failure?
By the
Who
waters.
shall be pierced the sharp sword of envy, and who shall be torn by the wild beast of resentment? Who shall hunger for championship, and who shall thirst for approval? Who shall be shattered by the earthquake of social change, and who shall be plagued by the pressures of conformity?
Now, I want you to take this text at some point and compare it to the traditional text, because it's written based on the text. It's just translating a couple words in a nuanced way. All right, keep going.
Who shall be strangled by insecurity, and who shall be stoned into a submission? Who shall be content with his lot, and who shall go wandering in search for satisfaction? Who shall be serene, and who shall be distraught? Who shall be at ease, and who shall be afflicted with anxiety? Who shall be poor in his own eyes, and who shall be rich in tranquility? Who shall be brought down with futility, and who shall be exalted through achievement? But teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah have the power to change the character of our lives. Therefore, let us resolve to repent, to pray, and to do good deeds, so that we may become a truly new year. Being a truly new year.
It shouldn't. We may begin. It should say.
Begin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. No. You're right. All right. Yeah, Suzanne. Can't hear you.
What I wanted to, okay, just
You're muted again.
unmute.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, these are things that in some ways are attainable. The traditional is so, I can't do that. That's way too hard. It's way too perfect. It requires knowledge that I don't have. But this is bringing it down, if you must say so, to things that are possibly attainable. And that's a whole new way, to me anyway, of looking at it.
Right. So I would say to you that to some extent, what it's trying to do is make it, it's a beginning point. It is not an end point. In other words, the goal is, when you say I don't have the knowledge, the goal is that you get the knowledge. Go out and fix that problem so that you can strive for the next level up. This is step one. This is step one. It is attainable for everybody, but just like you say to a child, great, you did wonderful in 3rd grade or 7th grade or whatever. Good for you. Next. Let's go for 8th grade. All right. So next is learn the next level and take on 1 or 2 more mitzvot and go beyond just the social, but go on to the religious as well. Right. You can't have one without the other at the end of the day. You can't have to be ethical without ritual is not religion. To follow rituals without ethics is also not religion. You need both.
That makes sense.
All right. So this Sunday there is no class. So next week, for those going forward, it'll be Tuesday night and Thursday noon at Zoom at noon. After this week, I'll be doing Kol Nidre. Okay. And then after that, I'll do Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. I'll do the confessionals, and then I'll do a week of Nila. That's the plan. So I'm going to give each one of them 3 times, so that if you can't make one, you can still attend. All right. I do ask you as much as you can. I hate putting stuff up on the screen because I want to see faces. I don't want to look at paper. So if you could run these things off, we send it to you in advance. Run it off. I want to see your faces when I'm talking, not be looking at a bunch of words on the screen. It might be my age. It could be, but that's who I am. I like faces. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you
comments or
again.
Much, Cosmin. Thank you very much.
My
Have a
pleasure.
good night, everybody.
Good night.
Stay
All right.
safe.
May we not get too bad a storm.
Indeed. Please, God.
Please, God.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank
My
you.
honor. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.